has labored, he has suffered to lead his people into the land of freedom. He is the Redeemer. He has labored, he has suffered to lead his people into the land of freedom. He is the Redeemer.
The imposition of a value-added tax VAT, according to the organized labor, undermines the principles of fair taxation and social justice. According to the labor union, electricity is a fundamental utility essential for everyday life and economic productivity, but taxing it only widens the gap between the wealthy and the vulnerable in society. They clarify that their position is the total and unconditional withdrawal of a 15% VAT on electricity consumption and not just a mere suspension. The imposition of VAT on electricity is seen as insensitive and autocratic, exacerbating the already worsening living conditions of Ghanaian workers. Comrade Patrick Bawumia is the Greater Accra Council Chair of the Organized Labor.
Our destiny is in our own hands, and our solidarity must be activated now to force this government do the needful to remove the killer nuisance 15% VAT on electricity. Like a dead elephant, the call from our national leadership was not heeded too. We, as Greater Accra Regional Organized Labor, associate ourselves with the demands of our national leaders and thereby emphasize that we cannot pay VAT on electricity. We will not pay today, we will not pay tomorrow, we will never pay. We in the organized labor in the Greater Accra region of Ghana unequivocally opposes this government's decision to impose a 15% value-added tax on electricity consumption. Comrades, this is a regressive policy. This threatens the livelihoods of hard-working Ghanaians and undermines the nation's economic stability. Actually, imposition of this awkward, bad, and nuisance VAT on electricity is a basic necessity for households and businesses alike. Will this unreasonably burden already struggling citizens? Low-income families will be hit the hardest as they are forced to allocate a large portion of their income to cover essential electricity bills. It must be pointed out also that this imposition of 15% VAT on electricity undermine the principles of fair taxation and social justice. Electricity is not a luxury, but a fundamental utility essential for everyday life and economic productivity. Taxing it only exacerbates inequality and widens the gap between wealthy and the vulnerable in our society.
Few days ago, organized labor representing the interest of Ghanaian workers gave government an ultimatum to withdraw the directive by January 31st, 2024. However, government has not communicated directly with organized labor, instead used print and social media to suggest a suspension of the VAT directive pending further engagement with key stakeholders. The fate of Ghanaian workers and the nation's economic stability now hang in the balance as organized labor prepares to mobilize its forces in a united stand against the imposition of a 15% VAT on electricity consumption. Ivy Abnadidenakite for Pan-African Television News.
I derive my greatest satisfaction from solving problems, and I have done so whenever I am given the opportunity, and will do more if I am given the mandate to do so. I had long held the view that many of these problems facing the economy could be resolved through digitalization. In fact, in my 2010 book on monetary policy and financial sector reform in Africa, I proposed digitalization, amongst others, as the way forward for African countries. So when we assumed office in 2017, as Vice President, I made the decision, with the blessings and support of the President, to focus on the critical but underdeveloped systems that would expand the economy, improve systems, and create jobs through digitalization. Therefore, as the Finance Minister oversees the budget through fiscal policy, the Governor of the Central Bank also focused on monetary and exchange rate policy. I focused on the complementary data and systems improvement that would ensure the ease of doing business and change the fundamentals of the economy, making it more dynamic and responsive to modern trends, and the management of it more scientific and efficient. Ladies and gentlemen, I was thankfully appointed as chairman of the economic management team. As a subcommittee to cabinet, we do not have any decision-making powers, but I am very proud of the quality of advice we have been providing over the years to cabinet. As Vice President, I was asked by the President to assist in solving some of the problems that were inhibiting the transformation of Ghana's economy. My approach was to help formalize the economy through digitalization, as stated in our 2016 manifesto. This is why my office has had oversight responsibility for many of the government's digitalization projects. We can only build a vibrant nation if we have strong systems and institutions that work. Very soon, artificial intelligence will transform the world. How are we preparing Ghana for this new phenomenon? I will now come to how we are using digitalization to transform the economy and preparing our society to be competitive, as Africa is busily becoming the largest single market in the world with its 1.4 billion people. Apart from the obvious economic benefits of moving in the direction of a cashless society, the literature does indicate that the more electronic payments are used in transactions as opposed to cash, the more there is traceability, and therefore the less the corruption. I would like to bring Ghana close to a cashless economy in the shortest possible time. So far, the Bank of Ghana has made a lot of progress in this direction by putting in place a lot of the systems and infrastructure required. These include mobile money interoperability, merchant interoperability, the universal QR code system, GH-Link, debit cards, eSwitch, and Ghana Pay. We have put in place the necessary infrastructure for Ghana to go cashless. Recently, the Bank of Ghana has completed a pilot of a digital version of the Ghana cedi in Seshwiwioso. This is known as the Central Bank Digital Currency, or the ECD. The ECD is designed to work online and offline and will be launched by the Bank of Ghana in due course. In my humble opinion, the ECD, with appropriate privacy protections, will be the ultimate weapon in our fight against corruption, because it will provide transparency, reduce the risk of fraud, robbery, tax avoidance, and money laundering, since it will be easy to track the movement of money and identify suspicious activity. The ECD will quicken the pace of Ghana's move towards a cashless or near cashless society. Ladies and gentlemen, to move towards a cashless economy, however, we have to encourage the population to use electronic channels of payment. To accomplish this, under my administration, there will be no taxes on digital payments. The e-levy will therefore be abolished.
Completely taken aback somewhat that Bawumia, of the Vice President of the Republic, who is now the standard bearer of the MPP, is making a promise that should he be given the mandate to steer the affairs of this country, he will scrap the e-levy. That runs counter to his stance on e-levy while he was in opposition, because when he was in opposition, he told us in clear, unadorned language that there should be nothing like Momo tax, that there should be no levy placed or imposed on mobile money transaction. That was his position when he was in opposition, soliciting votes, campaigning to Ghanaians to give his boss the mandate to steer the affairs of this country. So Bawumia and his boss came to power, and they did about face. That was to bring this obnoxious and questionable tax called e-levy. Even, at the time they brought this thing, Justice for Ghana was the pressure group that was in the forefront of fighting the e-levy. We picketed Parliament for about 8 days. We took our mats and pillows to Parliament to get the members of the House reject the e-levy. So Bawumia was in the country at the time we were doing that. So if Bawumia is today telling us that the only time he can scrap e-levy is when he's elected as the president of this country, that is dishonesty at its sickening level, nauseating level. His Excellency Bawumia is not the president of the Republic, but our politics should be principled one. That is what is lacking here. We don't have values, we don't have principles, we don't have personal philosophies in politics. You understand? No personal principles, no personal values, no personal philosophies. People are just in politics for the convenience of it, so they can benefit from the largesse of the state. So in situations like this, he is appealing to Ghanaians that should he be given the mandate, he will scrap the e-levy, because at this time he doesn't have the power to do so. If he were a principled politician, a politician with enduring values, sublime values, noble values, he would have voiced his disagreements, you understand, on the e-levy. He never did. Elsewhere, Bawumia would have mastered the courage to tell the boss that I disagree with you, don't do this. And that may even would have led to his resignation.
It is assumed by many as a usual Harmattan period, but some revelations from think tank data collectors indicate otherwise. According to the latest ranking from IQAir as of February 4th, 2024, Accra has an air quality index of 371, falling into the hazardous category. This means that the air quality in Accra is significantly more polluted than in other major cities worldwide. The primary pollutant in Accra's air is PM 2.5, which refers to particulate matter with a diameter of 2.5 micrometers or smaller. The concentration of the PM 2.5 in Accra is currently 63.1 times higher than the annual air quality guideline value set by World Health Organization. This situation is deeply worrying as Accra has surpassed other major global cities known for their pollution challenges. The combination of the existing pollution issues and the ongoing Harmattan season has further worsened the air quality in the city. In response to this crisis, senior meteorologist from the Central Analysis and Forecast Office of the Ghana Meteorological Agency, Joshua Asamoah, has advised the public to take precautions. He specifically highlighted the need for vulnerable groups such as children, pregnant women, older adults, and individuals with pre-existing heart and lung diseases to wear masks to protect themselves from dusty and polluted air.
The air gets polluted almost every day. There's exhaust, the fumes from the exhaust from cars. As we're getting a lot of cars in the capital, we're getting lots of pollutants also entering the atmosphere. We're also getting pollutants from even burning of tires, coal, all those things are all contributing to the pollution that we are seeing in the atmosphere. Even industries in Accra, the emission from these industries are all contributing. But this is all year round. From January to December, there's this kind of emission happening. But the concentration get very high during December, January, February, when we enter into the Harmattan, because that's intrusion from the Sahel areas, from Chad, Niger, Nigeria areas, brought into the country by winds that are moving into towards the Atlantic Ocean. So as the winds are coming from there, they carry these dry and dusty conditions along with them, deposit them into the country. So the atmosphere is already polluted, but it hasn't gotten to the very unhealthy and hazardous level. But once the dust comes, it just increases the concentration, and we get this alarming poor quality index. The best thing to do now is to seek medical advice. See, everybody will have his or her own complications. So the best thing you can do is seek medical advice. They look at you and tell you the exact things that you should do. But in general, what we advise is that you clean regularly. That is one. Cover foods quite well so that the dust will not settle on them, and then you don't get them into your system and cause troubles for you. Wear a mask if you can. When the dust concentration is very high, we advise that you use air purifiers, so at least you'll be a bit safe. And then another thing is that you avoid your exposure to the dust, and so limit your outdoor movement. You have more indoor activities. People who are used to exercising around this time openly, you don't want to limit that one, so that at least you don't expose yourself so much to the dust which is already in the atmosphere.
In 2019, approximately 3,000 premature deaths were attributed to air pollution in Accra. At the country level, air pollution-related deaths exceeded those from malaria, tuberculosis, and HIV in the same year. The air quality situation demands immediate attention and action. The government, along with relevant authorities and organizations, should work together to implement measures to mitigate pollution and improve the overall air quality in the city. For now, mask up to stay healthy. Stanley Koblako for Pan Africa News.
He has labored, he has suffered to lead his people into the land of freedom. He is the Redeemer. He has labored, he has suffered to lead his people into the land of freedom.
Good morning to you and thank you very much for choosing the Mother of All Talk Shows, Alhaji and Alhaji. And of course, we are live on Pan-African Television here at Belingpe in the Greater Accra region of the Republic of Ghana. Welcome, and thank you for choosing us. This morning, we're spending time on the vision of Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia. There's a story I can tell, but you know the story better of who Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia is. Beyond being vice president and what he represents currently, he is now the flag bearer of the New Patriotic Party. This week, he shared his vision with us. We will talk about the fallouts and exactly the vision that he shared and the persona who is sharing the vision. And then we'll move on to the IMF simple warning to government. It's a simple, straightforward caution. Stick to the program guidelines. We have given you specific guidelines. We have an agreement with you. Do not change that. Because government was said to have gone into a cabinet meeting and then a decision was made to scrap the VAT on electricity. That did not please the IMF because, of course, there were clear objectives. Now, government is saying, you know what, hold on ECG, hold on NETCO, we will go and have dialogue with organized labor. Organized labor initial response was, oh, no, we will not agree. We will not agree. We are going on our demonstration on the 13th. Yes, yesterday, the things have changed. Organized labor now says, no, we'll go into the dialogue. We'll hold on with the demonstration and go and have a conversation with government. That's the second issue we'll be discussing. And then we'll move on to the GJA's simple call to every media house in Ghana. Black out 2 politicians, Farouk Mahama, and of course, there is Hawa Compson. The two of them should never find space. Nothing they do should find space in the media because of assaults on journalists. But this week too, Salt FM, a radio station in Agogo, was closed down for the same reasons that were assigned for the closure of Radio Gold. The only problem with this is that they, in addition, confiscated their transmitter and took it to Kumasi. So we'll be discussing that in our last topic. These are matters that get to you when you are in the media space. But anyway, these are the 3 issues that we set out to discuss today. And joining us for this discussion today, Mr. Kwesi Prajinia, who is General Secretary of the Socialist Movement of Ghana, joining us in studio. Last week, we were in Kumasi. This week, we are here back in the studios, Kwame Nkrumah studios of Pan-African Television. And of course, Solomon Owusu was also in Kumasi with us. He's a member of the Movement for Change. They are pushing Mr. Alan Kojo Nchemantine to be the next president of Ghana. And then there's Ni Yaboy Anan. Ni Yaboy Anan is a financial analyst. Interestingly, he has quite a story when it comes to the economy and what has happened to some of the people he's worked with over the years. And then to complete our panel today, we'll have Dr. David Percy, who is a student of history and politics, to complete the panel today for us. We're already a bit behind time, so let's dive right into it and start with Dr. Bawumia's vision and Dr. Bawumia himself before the vision. And I'll start from my right with Mr. Solomon Owusu.
Thank you very much, Senna, and good morning to co-panelists. Let me also take this opportunity to thank the people of Abu Abu for that wonderful reception they gave to us when we were there last week. The numerous members who are converted to join the Movement for Change, very grateful for seeing the light and seeing it very early. Senna, this morning we are not just going to talk about Dr. Bawumia, but we will be talking about the insincerity in our body politic and why Ghana is where we are and why Ghanaians must identify, as Trump will say, you identify and you terminate. We must identify all the fake politicians in this country and terminate them as soon as possible, so that this country will have the kind of leadership that can lead to its growth. days leading to the famous lecture, I call it a lecture, the New Patriotic Party had given the indication that they would do everything possible to whitewash Dr. Bawumia, who has been an integral member of this whole administration. In fact, if you take out Nana Akufo-Addo, he is the second in command, and most of government's policies has been initiated from his office with the able assistance of the finance minister and Governor Addison. Indeed, Nana Akufo-Addo, in the days leading to the 2016 elections, made all of us to understand that as for him, he had a third class in economics, and so did not have what it takes to manage the economy the way Ghanaians wanted. And this is the reason why he bypassed every individual in the MPP and went straight to go and bring someone who was outside the party, who did not have a party card, who had never done anything to contribute to the growth of the New Patriotic Party, to come and help him deal with the economic problems that we had. And it was also based on that between 2014 to 2016, he held series of lectures. He concentrated his lectures on the economy. And at that time, I never heard from Dr. Bawumia that there was anything called digitalization, depending on where you stand, whether it's IT or whether. I never heard that word, digitalization, from him. Always we were treated to issues of interest rate, inflation, GDP, and so on and so forth. And that gave death to GDP. All these things, this man made Ghanaians to believe that he was a don, or he was someone who was in charge of economic matters. And he carried a lot of intellectual minds along, thinking that because he was speaking the right notes, not knowing there was a difference between theory and practicality of any subject. So his behavior in government then sends me back to his whole CV. I've been doing a lot of research on his CV ever since he became the vice president, to connect the dots as to why all the beautiful things that he said in opposition, he's unable to implement. And Senna, the only conclusion that I've come to is that in this country, we must not give credence to people who do not have hands-on experience. Textbook knowledge can send you to say 20% of what life can give you. But in terms of achieving something worth it, you don't need these theories. And Dr. Bawumia is an example of people with theoretical backgrounds who have no clue as to how we run an economy. So just to back it, they tried whitewashing him, and they started with the women's organizer of the party, who tried to make the point that Dr. Bawumia, all major government policies that are in the negative, he never took part. The e-levy, he was not part of it. I remember defending the e-levy when I was in the MPP, because the point is that if you are taking taxes for the state, you are not taking taxes for the individual. You are taking taxes to fix the very problems that is confronting the country. And governments across the globe thrives on taxation. Nobody comes into government or power having his or her own money. I mean, those that are vying for the position of the presidency today, none of them have their own money. You can only rely on the taxes that you take from your citizens to develop your country. So to that extent, I was worried that, look, if it was going to deal with our issues, if it was going to prevent us from ceding this country back to the IMF, then what was the problem with it? At that time, as a communications person for the New Patriotic Party, I never heard Dr. Bawumia disassociate himself from the e-levy. Neither did I hear any government official disassociate himself from the e-levy, only to be told by Kate Jemfua, and I don't know how she managed to find herself at cabinet And it tells you the level of thinking that goes into cabinet. That he was at cabinet. And when the deliberations on e-levy was going on, Dr. Bawumia and Esla Owusu were the two people that dissented. They did not agree to the e-levy. But interestingly, Esla Owusu, that we are told did not agree to the e-levy implementation, was the one that was going around with the finance minister telling the whole world that the e-levy had the potential of dealing with all our problems as a country. Then, to further make the case that Dr. Bawumia is not part of any problems that have been caused in this administration, and to put or push matters onto the throat of Nana Akufo-Addo and Ken Ofori-Atta, they use Atachia as someone very close to the family to say that it was time for Ken Ofori-Atta to step down for all the bad deeds he has done, which is impeding the successful electoral victory of Dr. Bawumia. For them to tell Ghanaians that, you see, the main problem is Ken Ofori-Atta. He is not there. Dr. Bawumia would now have that free hand to operate. So the stage had been set for the man to also come in, finally, to just come and then extricate himself from all the problems that is engulfing this country at the moment. But when I heard the title of his lecture, I wouldn't call it any policy statement. It's a lecture. He only gave a lecture. I thought he was going to depart from the usual rhetorics. So I said I will listen to Dr. Bawumia. I took my time. You know, at the same time, Nigeria was playing South Africa. Yeah. But I said I will sacrifice football and listen to Dr. Bawumia and see whether indeed he represents the future as he's claiming. And we represent the past, because what he's saying is that he represents the future, and all of us, the rest of us, are living in the past. So the title or the theme that I gave to his lecture was Bold Solutions for the Future. A lecture that had about 73 pages, more than 80%, that is supposed to be bold solutions for the future, were dedicated to the achievements of this administration and what he has done. But what surprised me was that in describing his achievements under this administration, he then told all of us that he was a mate and that given the opportunity, he would drive better than the main person. But let's put certain issues in the right perspective so that Dr. Bawumia would note that where the country has gotten to, we have moved beyond mere rhetorics. The things that he did in 2014, 2015, 2016, if he continues to do the same thing, it's not going to yield him any votes, because the Ghanaian is suffering. Senna, the problems facing this country currently has to do with unemployment, deficit in our infrastructure, and corruption. These are the three main issues confronting this country. So if anybody intends to lead this country, then that person's solutions must be solutions that will deal with these three basic problems we find ourselves. The man started recounting the achievement of the government from 2017 to 2019, how the government performed in all the indices, from inflation to deficit to interest rate to GDP to external balance and so on and so forth. So I was asking myself that when Nana Akufo-Addo and Dr. Bawumia were campaigning, did they tell Ghanaians that as for us, we can only manage this country when all other factors are equal, when there are no external shocks, when everything is moving smoothly, or they promise Ghanaians that whether good or bad, they will make sure the standard of living of the Ghanaian will be very good. The indication that I got from his speech, recounting the achievement of this government, was that they did well when the international market or when the world economy was doing well. and the economy tumbled or decided to behave the way it is behaving today because there was an international problem. But if all that you can tell Ghanaians is that you can only do well when the international economy is doing well, and we will not do well when the international economy is not doing well, then what's your business of coming into power? Then anybody can decide to lead this country. If you attribute the problems that this country continues to go through to Ukraine and Russia, yes, I agree that Russia-Ukraine has had an effect on our economy. And indeed, if you look at the data, clearly it had a massive impact on our economy. But it will have an impact on our economy because our own lifestyles did not build that necessary buffers for us to be able to absorb any shocks that will come our way. We were just living ordinarily. We were not preparing for bad days. We were living our life as though every day we could go to the international market and borrow. When repayments are due, all that we were doing was that we would go back to the international market and borrow to come and pay the old one and then kickstart a new one, never thinking that there would be a time that there could be natural occurrence which would not allow us to go back to the international market. And for that reason, we cannot entrust the destiny of this country into someone who has no solutions beyond the normal. Again, Dr. Bawumia makes us understand that his role, the role that Nana Akufo-Addo championed or told the world or told the people of this country that he will be playing in this administration, he never was allowed to do so. Indeed, his own lecture tells us that whereas Ken Ofori-Atta was concentrating on fiscal policy, the governor of Bank of Ghana was concentrating on the monetary policy, yes, but he, who is supposed to be the head of the economic management team, that is coordinating the affairs of these two institutions, he was only reduced to an IT coordinator, where he was only providing a platform to be posting some of their policies. And how do you expect me to believe this? Indeed, if all that you were assigned to was to be an IT coordinator, how on earth were you able to enumerate or list all the things that you claim you did? The DVLA license, the digitalization of the DVLA, the passport, digitalization of the passport office, and so on. How were you able to do all these things if you were not in charge of policy? Again, if you were not in charge of policy, how on earth were you allowed to single-handedly introduce what you call Go for Oil, which policy document I have never cited? I don't know whether you have cited it before, but I have never cited any policy to the effect of what do you call it, Gold for Oil. Then it tells you clearly that the man only went there in agreement with Nana Akufo-Addo. They have begun to do what we call Yigumiso. Yigumiso campaign will not help these people. This business of when issue says we would associate with the government, when it is bad, all that we are going to do is that we will put it on Nana Akufo-Addo. It's a bad precedent. And that it will not encourage what we call teamwork. If you are in a team and the team is not performing, and you believe strongly that your solutions or you are not being heard, you have two issues. Either you resign from the government or the team, or you make sure that you put up a cogent argument for your views to be heard and implemented. You cannot be part of a system for 7 years and leading, and only to come and tell us that as for you, you were only a mate and now you have your vision. Then you go into the very visions that he wants to give to the people of this country. And let me tell you, after the program, I had an encounter with about 8 of those that were at the program to find out whether indeed there were bold solutions to our problems. And I asked them, just give me one bold solution Dr. Bawumia professed to deal with our problems. And I can tell you, all the 8 could not tell me a single thing. Because all the very things that he came to say are in our textbooks as basic as the primary schools. I mean, Sana, who doesn't know that industrialization is needed for this country. Which economic textbook does not tell you that if you are a country and you continue to rely on your raw materials for export, you are not going to make any gains? So if you tell me that you have a bold solutions for our future and all that you come and read to me is industrialization, then I mean you are not being truthful to yourself. In any case, when you go, and I'm taking him sector by sector, on industrialization, what he intends to do is to continue with the policy of Nana Akufo-Addo. That means you agree with Nana Akufo-Addo, but I can tell you that all the industrialization policy under this administration was written by Mr. Alhaji. In fact, the allusions of Dr. Bawumia that he was going to continue with assembly of vehicles, it's a direct policy proposal from Mr. Alhaji. And you went further to even write the automotive development plan. Now, whereas because he did not initiate that policy, he does not know where that policy intends to end. So all that he said was that he would continue with the assembly of vehicles. The industrial policy or the automotive policy of the country is not to continue to assemble vehicles in this country. The whole essence of our automotive policy is to be manufacturing the vehicles and its components here ourselves. And that is why in the policy there is the need that, you know, the Ghana Integrated Aluminium Development Corporation has been established. The whole essence of it is to be able to process our manganese, our iron ore, our bauxite in this country, to be able to produce steel. And beyond the production of steel, this same policy also calls for the establishment of petrochemical industry, which petrochemical industry will lead to the production of rubber. So you combine steel and rubber and you have your vehicle components to be producing your vehicles in this country. It tells you clearly that Dr. Bawumia only went and copied policies that he himself does not understand. If he understood the policy on industrialization, he wouldn't have come to read to us as a bold solution that all that the country was going to do was to engage in what you call assembly, when it is only a phase or the first step in dealing with our problems as a country. And that policy became necessary because if you look at our import bills, Ghana as a country imports a lot of automobile and less components. And so if you want to save the country of forex, all that you need to do is to tackle one of those products that leads us spending more of our forex externally. Now he goes back to tell us that when he comes, he would also encourage tourism. Now you go into tourism, what he intends to do. He says as a way of dealing with or enhancing our tourism, he is going to introduce e-visa. On the 11th of January 2023, Alan Kwadwo gave a national broadcast where he introduced his GTP. And I will entreat you to go back into the GTP and look at what Alan was proposing. Clearly, Dr. Bawumia is off tangent. He doesn't understand what is going on. The mere fact that you are introducing e-visa, Mr. Alan Chamati was telling you that we were going to introduce free visa into this country. Who takes visa and go to Singapore? All your examples that you were giving, you were alluding or comparing it to Singapore. And if you are copying, why don't you copy well? You enter freely. Whereas the GTP is encouraging free entry into this country, especially from those of us in the African sub-region. You are talking about e-visa. This is not a bold solution. This is only living in the medieval ages, where visa prevents a lot of people from entering a country. Now again, he says, when you go to sports, he is going to form a new secretariat called the Ghana Sports Secretariat. And I don't know what that Ghana Sports Secretariat will do that is different from the National Sports Council. Already there is a National Sports Council that is supposed to be made efficient by putting the right personnel there. People who man that sports council, who will not give our stadium to musicians to go and perform when a football club is supposed to use that place to be playing football. If you have people or managers of the National Sports Council who highly understand their role That does not mean you should come and create another secretariat that will perform the same function. So this cannot qualify as a bold solution for the future. Establishment of a secretariat would only lead to increased budget, and you and I know that when you take our budget, 2 line items take all our money. Emoluments. By creating this Ghana Sports Secretariat, you are going to engage more people into the public sector or the civil service, and so our wage bill will go up, and this cannot solve the current problems that we are dealing with. It is only a waste of time. Then he goes on to taxation, and that's where I realized that if we do not say it as it is, people will take it for granted and think that they are smart. You have been part of cabinet and the head of the economic management team for the last 7 years, Senator. Every taxation that has been proposed has come from you and seconded by the finance minister. Now he says even the very taxes that he took part, when he comes, he will scrap it. Is it not insulting the people of this country? If he really respects the people of this country, Dr. Bawumia will not say that when given the opportunity, he will scrap the 15% levy or VAT on electricity. Senator, you see, the insincerity in our body politic, particularly in the last 7 years, is so sad. And that the future generation of this country risk being liars if they continue to look up to Dr. Bawumia. See, this 15% VAT that we are complaining of, together with the emission levy, emanates from the staff level agreement that Ghana reached with the IMF. And in that agreement, Ghana promised the IMF that we will be able to pay the credit facility we are taking from them by enhancing our domestic revenue mobilization. How are we going to enhance it? Dr. Bawumia, together with Ken Oforiatta and Governor Addison, identified certain areas that government was going to tax to rake in more revenues. One of such areas was the imposition of 15% VAT on electricity and emission levy. So, with your permission, I'll read a portion of the document, the staff level agreement, for people to understand why we must not take Dr. Bawumia serious and why it is so dangerous that adults, because when you are 60 years, and let me say here that those that refer to him as a young man are doing a great disservice to the people of this country. How can a 60-year-old man be a young man? Say the young man, and I couldn't understand President Kufuor. I didn't know what he was trying to put across. I wasn't too sure that this young man, how can a 60-year-old man be a young man? But I'll come to President Kufuor in the latter stages of this discourse. In the IMF document, page 2 of the executive summary, I read, with your permission, small paragraph. See, discussions took place in Accra in September, in Washington, D.C. in October, and in Accra in December 2022. The mission held discussions with Vice President Bawumia, Minister of Finance Ken Oforiatta, and Governor of Bank of Ghana, Ernest Addison. So when the IMF mission came to Ghana, because they know that the Vice President is the head of the economic management team, they sat down with him in Accra in September. It didn't end there. They invited the Vice President to Washington, because in Accra the mission wasn't too sure that when he comes to Washington he will repeat it. So you come and tell our bosses whether all the things that you are proposing that we do, it will be the same thing. He told the IMF that, look, Ghanaians, they enjoy electricity too much and they have a lot of money sitting there. So in order to be able to come and pay back our IMF facility of 3 billion, we would put a VAT of 15% on them. So when he said it in Accra, they said, come and repeat the same statement in Washington. He gladly took a first-class ticket out of our tax money, went to Washington and reaffirmed that position, that you give us the money and we will implement the 15% VAT on electricity. It did not end there. The mission came back to Ghana again and said, Dr. Bawumia, do you still stand by? We implemented the 15% VAT on electricity. he confirmed it in December. And out of that the IMF reached this agreement. If you read the agreement very well, it was not as though the IMF gave us their own conditions. They allowed us to write our own program, and then when we agreed with them, that program was approved, and it was approved by one Amaliza, Fedelina, and Golona Chibet. They approved the nonsense that was done by Dr. Bawumia, Ken Oforiatta, and Governor Addison. So if you mount a podium and you say you have bold solutions and you are talking about your own policy for the future, and one of your key policies is on taxation, how to reduce taxes, and you tell us that given the opportunity, you would remove the 15% VAT on electricity, something that you yourself put there. You would cause the emission levy to be removed, something that you wholeheartedly agreed to. And you have people of 70 years, 80 years, 50 years sitting there who are supposed to have gone to school, who have read, clapping for something that he himself, a problem that he has caused. Then, Senator, it explains why there is filth all over the country. Then it explains why every young man now wants to enter into the business of politics, because the only tool that you now need in politics is how to lie and get people to cheer you on. So Dr. Bawumia could not have professed any bold solution in terms of taxation. Now he goes forward and says that in order to have a reduced tax regime, there will be a flat rate at the port for all containers. And I heard my good friend Dr. Deguta President, all of a sudden I've forgotten his name, praise him for this. I said, what? Is it coming from the moon? Someone just told you that I will apply a flat rate. So that the person did not tell you whether the flat rate will be $1 million, will be $300,000, will be $500,000, and you have someone who calls himself a PhD holder. So that is the best thing he had. So if you, based on this, go and vote for him, and when he becomes the president and say, well, my flat rate is $40,000, would you then go back and demonstrate? You see how politicians, they deceive their minds? It tells you that indeed he only came to read something out just to represent something. Now you go into his own idea. Let me also take you back again. Remember, initially I told you that between 2017 and 2020, 2022, government had created close to 2.1 million jobs. Another insincerity. Because as of 2023, according to the Minister of Employment, there were only 1.8 million Ghanaians who had registered with the Social Security and National Insurance Trust. Is Bawumia telling us that the government is defrauding the state? Because even we, the private sector stakeholders, when you open a business and you don't pay your slate, every day you are being threatened with court action. Every blessed day. Money that is supposed to be saved somewhere for my future, my own money. If you fail to pay, you will be prosecuted. Now here is a government that is telling us that it created 2.1 million jobs between 2017 and 2022. So 1.8 on state payroll. It means that there is a deficit of close to 400,000 if my mathematics is right. But even the insincerity with it, you can't tell me that all the public sector jobs have been created by the New Patriotic Party. You came to meet a public sector. Are you telling us that the 2.1 million is on top of what you came to meet? If the 2.1 million is on top of what you came to meet, every budget that we have read in this country puts the public sector figure at 700,000. So in effect, we have to be talking about close to almost 2.8 million people working in the public sector. So what are the rest? And why is it that it's not reflected in those that are paying slate? It tells you the man only conjured figures from wherever he knows or wherever he got it from and spew it to Ghanaians, so that in the following day their spin masters will go on various radio stations and go and talk about the the bold solutions that he has, which bold solution is nothing short of jokes. Senator,
please conclude on this now for me.
Let me conclude by saying that one of the things that he said, which struck me, and I believe that we have to be serious as a country, is the fact that he intends to abolish national service. Senator, he has made nonsense of all of us, all of us who went through the hassle of doing national service. And you know why Dr. Bawumia will suggest that? I've been scanning through his CV. Unless he wants to tell us that he did the national service. Because right after Tamale Secondary School, you went to UK. It means after A level, he never did any national service. And from there, all his education was abroad. So he does not know the importance of national service. If he cares to know, the only avenue the young ones from university are using to make themselves relevant after school is national service. The number of people that uses it as a breather, it tells me clearly that Dr. Bawumia has lost touch with the reality. And his reason for taking out national service is that employers want to employ people right after university, and because of national service, they are unable to do so. How is that possible? If someone wants to employ someone at the university or from the university, wouldn't it be prudent that that institution would rather even use the national service as a probation period to test the knowledge or the IQ or the suitability of those graduates, so that beyond that they are offered a permanent employment? And you call this a bold decision or a bold solution for future prospect of this country? It is just not a bold solution. And finally, my dear President Kufuor, you know I respect you so much. You see, don't let these people go down with you. You have not had any role to play in this administration. Your engagement, though you gave them a bite, if you listen to what he told them, he was rather telling Dr. Bawumia and Nana Akufo-Addo that they lacked leadership qualities. I believe your utterances at that event, that he was the chosen one, has rather reduced the number of people that looks up to you. How can someone who is running away from the very portfolio that he has been given be the chosen one? How can someone who came to meet an inflation of 15.4%, that I believe was so high, that I championed that John Mahama has to be removed immediately to save the people of this country, now we are doing inflation of 23%, and President Kufuor is telling me that he is the chosen one? How can someone who came to meet debt to GDP under 60%, now we are doing more than that, come to tell me that he is the chosen one? How can someone who came to meet an exchange rate of 1 to 4.2, now doing an exchange rate of close to 1 to 12, be the chosen one? Then you wouldn't have done as that good, President Kufuor. And I believe that the earlier you restrain yourself to be a statesman, the better. I'll end my submission here.
Tahir at least says I should greet you for him. And what you're saying about Bawumia is all the truth. That God bless you anyway. Well, if you just join us, it's the matter of all talk shows, Alhaji and Alhaji, live on Pan-African Television and on Radio Gold 90.5 FM. Let me acknowledge the other stations we are live on before I come to Niaboyan and Shine FM in Akachi. You can listen to us live on Shine FM in Akachi 96.9. We're also live on Hills FM and Daklu on 91.7. Nuance Radio Ketekrachi 89.7. Sela Radio Dabala 97.1. Diamond FM in Tamale on 93.7. Boa Radio in Yendi on 106.5. Of course, there's Radio Kita on Saboba on 95.7. Benya FM, Elmina 105.7. Global FM 105.1 in Ho. There's Zeps FM 95.9 in Zabila. True FM 92.5 in Adeso. Lamara FM 89.1 Tripoli. There's Boem 88.87 FM in Jasikan. Lukusi Radio is on 96.1 in Vegolo Kwati. Dine FM 90.9. Sekpele 104.3 in Lekpe. We are live on all those radio stations this morning. Me? Good morning.
Good morning, Sena. Very great. My colleague panelists, your viewers, and also the people of Fotododiodo. You've called upon us to dissect what was referred to by the leader of the MPP as vision and policy priority. I would start first and foremost by saying that when the Americans call someone mad, it is that point that one is so hungry that he will not listen, he cannot make reason, you cannot reason with him. He's only bent on doing one thing. And at that point, instead of others who would say that he's crazy, the Americans say that you are mad. But let me tell you a story, and then you can marry it with what I have just said. And let me greet Mr. E.S. Tettefield. He was my boss in Panelist Foster, today PKF Ghana. And he was the senior partner. I got to the firm as a young man, and quickly I became his hatchet man. I was always by him. He trusted in me so much. He believed in me. He knew that I would get the job done at all times. When it is a difficult job, you can be sure that he will call upon me to do that difficult job because he knows that we would do it. So here are we with a client, and the two of us have written our CVs. We have shown our experiences. We have told the client that yes, we are capable. We can do the job for you. And the client hired us to do the job. We did the job, and it failed. We failed. And so my boss called a meeting and said, if we talk of this failure, if we trumpet this failure, it is a failure not just for me, but for all of us. So let us not talk about our failures in public. This hatchet man, which is me, boast to the clients and tell the clients that my boss will not listen. My boss is the problem. If you hide me alone, I can solve the problem. What should the client think of us as a firm and those responsible for his job? What Ghana is faced with today is not what we are talking about. What the client need to find out is between me and the manager on the job, who is my boss. Which one of us is mad? We are supposed to look for a mad man. That is what we are supposed to do. All this talk about vision, for me, is balderdash. And excuse me to use that word. You came to the people of Ghana with a thing. You sold the man. It was a ticket. and you said, my deputy, my vice, is the most competent. He's done it before. He has the experience of the job. When you hide me, I am coming with him to solve this problem or challenge of a nation. Today, that ticket is telling us, or that leadership of the two, one is telling us there was a madman in leadership. There was somebody who would not listen. There is somebody who will not take advice. There is one that will just not make reason with any other person. If not, for me, why are we talking about some of the things we are talking about? Again, let me say this. Before you read a particular topic, you must look at who the author is. And based on the qualification of the author or the experience of the author, you can then rely on what the author says. My issue here is that the leader of the NPP has no credibility for me to rely on anything he says. And this is simple. Point 10 of his own speech. And this has been the trend. This has been the deceit that he has perpetrated all along. And we have all sat down and watched him do this. He says the fiscal deficit, which was reduced from 8.4% in 2016 to 4.1% by 2019, increased to 10.8% in 2020. What it means is that they improved, right? We had a fiscal deficit to GDP, which was 8.4. Dr. Bawumia was so dishonest to tell us that in 2018, there was a rebasing of our GDP. What it means is that the price changed. In fact, in that budget, they had actually stated that certain items that were not part of our GDP computations have been added to it in that budget. But let me give you the other aspect of the budget and where you should actually compare figures and numbers. In 2016, our overall deficit that we had to finance was 8.4 billion. Our revenue was 37.9 billion, which means that our deficit to revenue was 22.19%. In 2019, our overall deficit was 15.7 billion, as against revenue of 58 billion. The percentage is 26.68%, which is better. Did we actually reduce deficit to our revenue capabilities? No, it got worse. In that same budget of 2016, our revenue to GDP was 22.7%. 2019, our revenue to GDP was 17%. Did we improve? Did we really improve? Look, let's come to some of the things he had to say. He says that some of our challenges came out of the banking sector crisis. Apart from the external factors that we had, Russia and Ukraine, which is transitory in nature, which had corrected itself with time. Yes, we suffered some shocks with that. Other nations took counter actions to mitigate the effects of Russia-Ukraine. As the economic manager of this economy, you failed to do anything about it. And we actually had to suffer the full brunt of it. Look, the banking sector crisis, we had a choice. And I would say without no fear of contradiction that we took that position to close down banks because we believe that people who are not with us politically are holding capital, and they might direct capital to the wrong places, and therefore we close them down. If not, we could have used the opportunity to clean up the banks, bring confidence, and let Ghanaians buy into these banks. Rather than claiming to put together all the good assets. I don't know what is good assets. I've been looking for the definition of what a good asset is, and call it a consolidated bank. Which performance, I don't know up to today. Someone should show me the performance of those good assets put together. Those assets which were claimed to be good. Let anybody bring me the financial statement of the so-called good assets put together. And where are the bad assets? So this is clearly poor decision taking. Then we talk of the energy sector excess capacity. And up to now, nobody has convinced me of an excess capacity. In recent time, I had some arguments on, and I said, look, are we not learning as a nation? What are we doing? It's a joke. We always have installed capacity. You have available capacity, and available capacity is subject to capacity factors. What it means is that if you have 914 megawatt capacity with Akosombo, how many of the turbines are available for production? What is available for production in this part of our world, based on the water levels and all other conditions? You cannot churn out 914 megawatts out of an installed capacity of 914 megawatts. Hydro has a capacity factor of around 64%. In some cases, it's even 40 and 43%. What it means is that when you fired the 914 capacity, you will not be able to achieve 914. It is not possible. Solar has a capacity factor of 16%. In fact, the only plant that comes close to 100% is the nuclear. Is a nuclear plant. That's all. So let no man born of a woman come telling us that, well, our crisis was the energy, our situation was the excess capacity payment. When I come to Ghana with my investment, with my asset, and plant it here for you, for your generation of electricity, I have to pay for the capacity. And whether you take it or not, it has to be paid for, because I cannot actually put part of the capacity in the UK or in Togo. It is up to you to produce it at the optimum level and sell it wherever you think you can sell it and make money out of it, if it is excess. Then we come to the issue of the taxes. I will remove this tax, I will remove... Again, this is the absurdity of it. Yes, you remove A, you remove B, you remove C. What are the substitutes? What are the policies that will ensure that after you have removed this, we can still be able to make this the extra 4 billion IMF is requesting from us? Now, I am not surprised. This clearly tells me that yes, Dr. Bawumia was in charge of our economy, the removal of these taxes. Because we were told in 2016 that we will remove the nuisance taxes. He's just not able to use the word nuisance to his boss, but I will help him. These are mad taxes. Removal of mad taxes. Because this is tax that is coming from people who are mad, who will not listen to any reason. So clearly, Dr. Bawumia has been in charge. The leader of the MPP is in charge. Now, if you say you want to remove emission tax, did the NDC flag bearer Mahama actually the one who introduced it? The e-levy, was it introduced by the NDC? It was introduced by the government you serve as a vice president. What are your reasons for those removals? Have those taxes failed? We weren't told. Has the e-levy failed? By your own assertions in 2017, that taxes that were not able to achieve its purpose should be removed. If these taxes are still on our books, then they don't deserve to be removed, because they have actually, by your own assertion in 2017, they have actually met their purpose. Then I come to what he calls vision and all that, industrialization and all that. Well, I thought industrialization was supposed to be propelled by one district, one factory. That is what I was made to believe. That industrialization and making sure that we spread production across the length and breadth of Ghana, that drive was supposed to be supported, propelled, enhanced by that policy called 1D, 1F. Is Dr. Bawumia, the leader of the MPP, telling us that he no longer believes in the 1D, 1F? We have not been able to get even agriculture right. Food inflation is leading. We have donkeys who have become GPS holders, that they were able to transport fertilizers from the north to Burkina. We haven't gotten these things right. Tractor plowing our lands, we haven't gotten it right. Dr. Bawumia is talking of robotics. To do what? What are the robotics going to do? You are talking of robotics that will take over the jobs of me and you. You are talking of artificial intelligence that will substitute me and you, when in fact you have not even been able to provide jobs for the people. For good 8 years, you have failed to provide the jobs that you claim you will provide. This man certainly cannot be an authority of anything he says economically. He is an expired good that cannot be bought. And I think it is time for us to stop entertaining some of his utterances. If there is anybody to be blacked out in the media, it's Dr. Bawumia. And we must be able to educate the people. If not, we risk one day being governed by somebody who is totally mad. If all we would do is to throw out unreasonable policies, visions out there, and that will get the media talking about it unintelligently, and all of us chance on it, and we are all talking Dr. Bawumia vision. What is vision about this? Tell me. Are we joking in this country? How are we entertaining this on the media? How? How? In what form and what shape? Are we educated people in this country? How can we entertain such a thing? How can my party respond to even this? For Christ's sake, why is the NDC responding to this? What, are we not intelligent people? A man that is leading the economic management team, I should have that business to say that he was responsible. When his boss has come to tell me that he's the one in charge of the economy. When it is the same NPP, what has changed? That today, have we registered a new NPP?
Yes.
There is a new registration. The EC have actually admitted a new party called a new NPP. The New Patriotic Party has become new again. What are we being served with? So now, I don't want to go further, because this, I think we have all gotten it wrong discussing these issues. I don't see why any reasonable person should find anything the man had said important for any discussions. In fact, in our media, and a response from my party to this man. All the response they deserve is that certainly there are mad people in leadership. Whether it's my boss who was mad, or is mad, or I, his associate, I'm the one who is mad. We have to find who that madman is. That's all. That's the job the people of Ghana has to do. And nothing else. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. If you just join us, we are discussing, he disagrees, but he says it is his vision. Bold solutions for the future.
Bold solutions.
Yes. So Dr. Bawumia's bold solutions for the future. He's not flag bearer of the New Patriotic Party. If you follow the 2016 elections, you know who Dr. Bawumia is, and subsequently the years that have come. I'll let Dr. Percy have his 10, and then I'll come and do as many messages as I can before I go to Comrade Kwesi Prajine. Doc.
Thank you very much, Sana. Maybe Happy New Year is in order, right?
Yeah.
Because I haven't seen you this year. Bold
Solutions for the future.
for the future. Well, I mean, Dr. Bawumia has a very difficult and unenviable task. Whilst being part of this current gang of incompetence and non-performers who have completely trashed our economy, he has to sound and come across as a leader of the opposition. It's a very difficult job. Yet they have a lot of assets. The NPP still controls, directs, owns at least 80% of the media. Could even be higher, at least 80% of the media. By and large, they shape the national narratives. In the period 2013, starting with the buffoonery before the Supreme Court, they sold us what I term con job 1 that led to victory in December 2016. And a group of this country were told that the management of the economy was in the hands of Dr. Bawumia. It's significant that in the, when did this thing happen? Was it on Wednesday or Thursday? The address.
Wednesday.
Okay. Because there was a lot of hype ahead of it, which is to be expected. He spent a lot of time on so-called achievements of the regime. But it appears that his main brief was, as my friend Solo says, as ICT coordinator. Is that the name you're giving him? Hey, my brother, you are brave. He had to sound as the ICT coordinator. But I mean, he was sold. And indeed, there are many persons who are part of that con job. Some who are no longer with us. At a point, even including the so-called founder of the NDC. And many Ghanaians bought into that con. And then they spend the next few years, 3 years maybe, coasting on work that had been done by the previous regime. Because before the NDC went out, it was clear, I mean, all the prognosis was that things were going to get, quote unquote, better. That is, if in the new colony things are possibly ever better, but at least. What you do have are bouts of things getting better. So the next crisis, then you almost go back to square one, which is one reason why we've gone back to the IMF 17 times. But this 17th time is unique. We're not going back to the IMF in this shape ever. where we've effectively declared bankruptcy. We are not servicing our loans. We have stolen from people's savings. I mean, and for me, at this juncture, what marvels me is that the good people of this country, by and large, have still not caught up to the real difficulties of our current situation and the things that are to come that are much worse. If we really knew what is, the tsunami of pain that is heading our way, we will not be going about things this way. But even now I can see that a few star members of the cast are being assembled to sell this con job too. We know them. I shouldn't be advertising other news platforms on your station, but we know them. The multimedias and the CTs, and they're all there, all trying to airbrush a disastrous situation and to give the impression that we can proceed with business as usual. For me, the thing that really got this was when Dr. Bawumia said that Governor Ernest Addison saved our economy. He really did say that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, so that's one criminal speaking about another criminal. Yes. Because by any metric, what Governor Addison and the finance minister did were criminal. Now, what astonishes me is that to this day, the finance minister is still at post. The governor is still at post. And their boss says that they both did a good job. Really? Oh, well, I think that these are early days in a certain sense. But as I see it, it's going to be a very difficult job. Because I think that my colleague made a point about it, that you're dealing with someone who has zero credibility. Zero. Okay, we have to go by the prospectus that was offered to us, what was said. But maybe I should agree with the former director of the communication and my MP, my former MP, Bawumia Samoa. He made this point that if you are not prepared to say and do foolish things, it's difficult to progress in the MPP. I had observed that for a while, but it took somebody to come from the inside to confirm it. Now really, if you're going to go ahead in the MPP, you really must be able to say the most outrageous things. You must be able to invent facts on the fly and not blush. But I am saying that this is going to be a very difficult, very, very difficult job. Con job one was easy. They were in opposition. There are many willing accomplices. There are some who are even fooled, saying that, you know what, we should give these guys the benefit of the doubt. I remember there are very many persons, professors, associate professors, various kinds of persons. Oh, you know what? Let's give these guys the benefit of the doubt. It's going to be much, much more difficult this occasion, given the fact that we have experienced this incompetent gang. But like I said, it's early days.
Doc.
And I'm a patient person.
Thank you, Doc. Well, let me do a few messages from Facebook first. This one, so good morning to Kofi Era, Alasan Sule, Franklin Nate. Franklin Nate says, I'm now going to leave Dr. Bawumia for Solo and Afafranto. Now I'm becoming a very happy person because the hard work will be done by Alan's group and Ken's group. Members of the NDC only have to be vigilant on voting day. That is the view of Franklin Nate. Therefore, she says, sudden change since the selection of Dr. Bawumia is legendary. There's also Georgina Tamaklu also listening to Sulu, says, thanks to Alan, now we are hearing the truth from Sulu. Franklin again goes on to say, Nana Addo from the onset knew he is not worth the salt as president, but placed all his hopes on Dr. Bawumia as the one to help him achieve his childhood wish and dream. Unfortunately, Bawumia is true and poor PhD holder. This country is really in a mess. And there's Selda Glad, who is saying, cut this part of the submission. There was rebasing of the economy. There's Abdul Salam Rufai. All that Dr. Bawumia said is empty. He should have resigned if his advice is rejected and he can't disassociate himself from the MPP. Imagine Dr. Bawumia debating President Mahama on live television. It's going to be very interesting. Sandra Wilson. There's Emmanuel Ayu who says, Alhaji Bawumia turned to Pastor Bawumia. The communion has changed his mind. The bread and wine is his problem. Mia is also joining us in a good morning to us. Says this is the beginning of the end of Dr. Bawumia's political career. He will lose the general election terribly, and his party will then relegate him to the background, like all unwanted stepchildren, never to rise again. There's Francis Gordon, who is also joining us on Facebook. Dr. Bawumia's speech was empty with no pragmatic solutions. He kept on talking about digital revolution without making references to the framework or the hardware aspects that were made already by the NDC. Dr. Bawumia acted on his speech like he was in opposition, playing around with words in a dramatic digital style. The speech had no bearing to any solution to help build Ghana. Daniel Nangbele says the vice president, Dr. Bawumia's lecture was an embarrassment to himself and the entire New Patriotic Party. Good morning to Patron Solo. I've taken note of that. There's Gafaro Janton join us in the Savannah region. Ghanaians will never make such mistakes to vote MPP. Dr. Bawumia knows very well that he was a mate and the promise was too much. Sana, please, okay, thank you very much. There are Alasan Hamdan, who is also joining us from Nyohini South, so it doesn't make sense for ordinary Ghanaians to fall for Dr. Bawumia's tricks. We were part of those who sat on cabinet and implemented a decision to impose hardship on Ghanaians. In fact, we're told by Osaf Mafo that you led most policies introduced by this government and even applauded for introducing e-levy. Today he turns around to say he will cancel it. Tell him to solve 170 economic questions before Ghanaians can take him serious. Ameko Christian is also joining us. He's asking about Mr. Pratt, who is coming up next. There's Tahir Ali who's joining us. Says, we solo for me. What he's saying about Bawumia is all the truth. God bless him. I think I read that earlier. Robert Sando says, NDC is the only party that can rescue our mother Ghana. Elder Joseph Esiama Donko says, you have spoken, Solomon. Well done. It's a vivid analysis of the speech. There's Haruna Jibril, who is also joining us in regards to Mr. Solomon, also again for the brilliant and fantastic submission.
Say happy birthday to you.
Yes, he told me today is his birthday. Happy birthday to Haruna Jibril. Isa Adam says Dr. Bawumia's so-called vision for Ghana is very hollow and a loud sounding nothing. There's Johnny Kujo says, to be honest with you, Dr. Bawumia has no credibility. Who the best? Doctor, always refreshing hearing you talk. Bedu Kwame says, Mahama, after his inaugural speech in January 2024, should be assessed after 2 years. And if confirmed, things are positively improving, should be given another 6 years to continue. Samakofi Agunyo is also joining us. Saying, good morning. Why mind Dr. Bawumia? He's a scammer. Vekamek is also joining us. Bawumia has no message and his mannerisms do not even qualify him to be president. Philip Abuchi, in fact, Bawumia distanced himself from Nana Addo, and Bawumia's 70 pages were empty and useless. There's nothing in the 70 pages. Mrs. Senna, taxes that Bawumia and Nana impose on us, and today Bawumia said he is going to abolish them. Who does that? Jokes are ruling us. He sent that from Keta. The Ladam Kofi says, what is this man on? He looks forced and okay. I don't know what he was commenting on. The Judy Mensah again says is facing a leadership crisis which is causing the party center to crumble. There's Muniro Asani Haruna. Good morning to you. There's Swale Natonga. It's like digital started when MPP came to power. The first mobile money started in JM time. Mano James says Bawumia is using policy to define vision, forgetting that these two words have different meanings. Bawumia as a driver is on a journey of no return. Edward Dubaza is also joining us. Bawumia just came to do a liathon. He has got an enviable record as the biggest liar in Ghana's history. Maradam says, do you know that Bawumia made no mention of press freedom? Ablade Fiokwa is also joining us. I'll be shocked if Dr. Bawumia gets 40% votes coming elections. Juliana Belinda Obre, how can we give our country to Mace Banzan to rule us? At least you say you are assistant driver. Yeah. Who Dubai says Ghana's problem is the okay. Let me say this. So, Ghana's problem is the corrupt media, journalists, pastors, chiefs, imams, and academia. Nana Addo and Bawumia initiated the collapse of the banks by increasing the bank's capital from 120 to 400 million. Robert Arthur says the Don says it as it is. Good submission. Komen Sapila joins us. A lot of Ghanaians are now very clear in their minds that Ghana is destined for greatness under the leadership of Dr. Bawumia. Anyway, since okay, so that's Komen Sapila, and those are the messages I've just read from Facebook. Mr. Pratt.
Well, I'm going to start with something that I have not had the courage to speak about, since the so-called vision of Dr. Bawumia was unveiled.
Okay.
I was particularly worried about his apparent overexcitement, which was visible from the very beginning of his address to the end. And his overexcitement, was reflected in his body movements. It was reflected in his unwarranted laughter and so on, And I was so very worried about him. You see, that kind of overexcitement, which is visible and so on, in some instances will call for medical examination. Something is wrong. And I'm hoping that psychoanalysts who watched him, clinical psychologists who watched him and so on, may want to advise. Because that overexcitement is not normal. Watch his body movements and so on. You understand? So I was particularly worried about that. And since then, I've insisted that he ought to be pitied rather than scorned. And I insist that this gentleman really deserves our pity. After listening to him and watching him, I'm beginning to think that we need to revise the English dictionary. Completely revise the English dictionary. Because there was nothing about a vision in what he presented. Essentially what he presented was a wish list. A wish list. And that wish list itself had not been properly crafted to to the extent that he ends up self-indicting and validating his opponents. And it was troubling, you understand? Now, why do I talk about validation of his opponents? Many of the things that Dr. Bawumia says that he's going to scrap are things that were introduced by his administration, which his opponents criticized, and his opponents were shouted down. So even the final analysis, he comes to admit that his opponents were right and he was wrong, or his government was wrong. Does that not amount to validation of his opponent's position? And indeed, let's take e-levy. Bawumia today is looking us in the face and saying that, look, if I become your president, I would abolish e-levy. Okay? He is realizing that today. Others realized it 2 years ago. So on the basis of e-levy, its propriety or its impropriety, who deserves your vote? The one who saw it later? The one who implemented the policy which was bad, which has worsened the state of the national economy? Or the one who from the very beginning saw that there was a problem with e-levy? Who deserves your vote? This is clear as daylight. Now, there's also this aspect that must be exceedingly worrying, you understand? And Dr. Bawumia himself has described himself as an apprentice. He has described himself as an assistant headmistress and so on. Now, my question is very simple. He was part of the team. He attended cabinet meetings. And I even suspect that at some times he presided over cabinet meetings. Okay. Now, these wrong policies, decisions were taken on these wrong policies for implementation. He didn't like the policies, okay? From what he's saying today, he obviously didn't like the policies. So, Dr. Bawumia is telling us that he was defeated in cabinet. He was either defeated in cabinet or he didn't fight over these policies. You understand? Now, if he didn't fight over these policies, it raises substantial questions about his character, about his trustworthiness, that he sat in cabinet took decisions that he knew were wrong, which would damage the national economy. He kept quiet, he didn't fight, and those decisions were implemented. What a vice president. What a future president. Now, if he fought and was defeated, okay, it raises another issue of capacity. So it means that he sat in cabinet and couldn't convince his colleagues that what they were about to inflict on Ghana was wrong and unworkable. That's an issue of capacity. He didn't have the capacity. He didn't have the arguments. He didn't have the facts to convince his fellow cabinet members. My goodness. And he wants to be president? What a president he will be. I can't believe it. And he said all these things. Unexpected applause. Expected that all these things he had said would push the people of Ghana to make him president. Now, I've said this before and I'm going to repeat it. And I'm going to use his own, how do you call it? His own words. Not words really. But listen. The man says that he's an apprentice, the driver's mate. Apprentice, the driver's mate. Now, if you go to the trotro station, the only skill the apprentice has or displays. So, Abakala pass, Abakala pass, Abakala pass. Everybody can do that. Anybody can do that. Just hang on to the door of the bus and be shouting, yes, Abakala pass, Abakala pass, Abakala pass. The skills of the driver are much more. The driver has to have the capacity to anticipate. You understand? The driver really knows that all the 23 lives in the Mercedes-Benz bus, are in his hands and so on. The driver is a thoughtful person. The driver makes decisions and so on. So, for the last 7 years, all that Bawumia did was to be shouting, Abekala pass, Abekala pass, Abekala pass. And he enjoyed all the perks just for shouting Abekala pass. And that's how he sees himself. He sees himself just as an aplanke. For 7 years he was an aplanke, shouting Abekala pass. Can't believe it. But that's how Bawumia sees himself. In any case, and I've said this before, it's not new, I'm going to repeat it. All of us, 5 of us, we've joined a bus that is going to Insaum. A commercial bus going to Insaum. When we get to Caprice, the driver parks the car and says, I'm coming. Then he goes into a blue kiosk. He cuts 2 halves straight. I know that stuff is measured in quarters, halves, and fourths.
Yes.
So this driver, he cuts 2 halves straight away. And then on top of that, he takes an energy drink. And he's staggering towards the bus. The aplanke knows that this is what the driver has done, his boss has done. The aplanke doesn't protest. He doesn't alert the passengers, nothing. He sits there. He says, oh, one day I'll be the driver. So I can forget this one. My brother, that bus would not get to Fanko. It will crash and kill the people in it. And if that bus does not get to Fanko, crashes and kills the people in it, are you telling me that the aplanke is innocent and bears no responsibility for the accident? The aplanke who kept quiet, who didn't complain, who just waited his turn to be the driver. What kind of an aplanke is that? What kind of an aplanke is that? But this is what Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia says that he is. I'm not saying that he is. He himself says that he's an aplanke. Because I don't believe that he was an aplanke. But if we are to take his words seriously, who will trust such an aplanke? You see, it doesn't end there. Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia tells us that, look, a couple of months more, maybe 10 months more and so on, I will become president. Things are very bad now. My own government has imposed e-levy on you and you are suffering. Don't worry. Wait for another 10 months. When my boss is out of the way, I will take over and I will abolish your suffering e-levy. I can't believe it. I can't believe that he said that to us. Senator, can you believe that he said that to us? That we should continue suffering for 10 months. And that until he becomes president, e-levy will hang on our neck. Hey, this man, what does he think of himself? If e-levy is bad, if all the things he wants to ban are bad, why doesn't he speak now and ask for their removal now? Why should we wait for 10 months? Why? Why? What have we done wrong? What have we done to Bawumia that he wants us to suffer for another 10 months? And then when he becomes president, he will then pity us. Now he has no pity for us. When he has become president, he will pity us and remove this burden which was placed on us with his blessing. I can't believe it. There's something else, and I'm not making this up. Anybody who has watched the presentation of budgets over the last 7 years cannot forget this image of Ken Ofori-Atta carrying his custom-made bag and being followed by Dr. Bawumia to Parliament House. Indeed, it is only in this administration that I've noticed that the Vice President religiously follows the Finance Minister to Parliament House. That symbolism, what was it meant to portray? Why has Bawumia been always following Ken Ofori-Atta to Parliament? Clearly, it's an endorsement, it's a statement of endorsement of the budget. Yeah. So if he didn't like what Ken Ofori-Atta was saying, or was going to say, why did he religiously follow him to Parliament House to present the budget that he disagreed with? Now, my brother, yesterday I watched a lot of videos. I mean, these days, everywhere you turn, the videos are imposed on you, you have to watch them. Especially if you watch Metro TV. Metro TV does a classic job of playing these videos. So they played a couple of State of the Nation addresses by His Excellency the President. You understand? And in all of the State of the Nation addresses, the President makes the point that his economic policy and its implementation largely lies on the shoulders of his Vice President. And in one instance, the President praised Dr. Bawumia to the high heavens, called him smart and all of that. And then the cameras panned to Dr. Bawumia and he was so happy. He was so happy. He was laughing. He was giggling. He was shaking in his chair. My goodness. When the President praised him as the key manager of the economy, he was happy. He didn't protest. Now he was with President. He says, no, don't blame me. I was only the apprentice. I was only the assistant headmistress. Sana. That's a school. Maybe a senior high school. And there is a headmistress. And there is the assistant headmistress. And the headmistress notices that the food which is being served to the students is unwholesome. The students are eating unwholesome food. It will affect their health and so on. The assistant headmistress sits down and says, this headmistress is wicked. Look at the food being fed to the students. But in any case, I am not the headmistress yet. So wait. In 10 months' time when I become the headmistress, I would make sure that the children are not fed with poison anymore. What an assistant headmistress. What an irresponsible assistant headmistress that will be. And who, in his or her right senses, will make this assistant headmistress the headmistress? After displaying this irresponsibility, I can't believe it. Now, we should look at a few things. One of the promises that Dr. Bawumia makes is that he will run this country with the number of ministers substantially reduced. To how many? 50. Okay. That's very interesting. Again, there's a video of Dr. Bawumia sitting by his boss, in which the boss justifies the appointment of so many ministers and says, look, that tax is heavy. I can't do it alone. I need a lot more hands to be able to do the job. And Dr. Bawumia is nodding his head. Nodding his head. The job is heavy. You can't do it with 50 ministers. You need a lot more ministers to do it. He doesn't complain. He doesn't complain publicly. He doesn't complain privately. He goes along as vice president. Then John Dramani Mahama, former president, comes and says, look, this size of government is too much. We are broke. The economy is in the doldrums. We need to reduce the size of government. And therefore, if I'm given the mandate, I'll reduce the size of ministers to 60. Oh, Dr. Bawumia sees a chance to dribble John Mahama. So he comes and says, hey, the man says what? He says he will reduce it to 60. I will beat him. I'll reduce it to 50. This is undercut. Now, just imagine. The former President Mahama said that he will reduce the number of ministers to 30. What number would Bawumia have given? Just imagine that. Look, the people of Ghana, we are not stupid. The people of Ghana actually fought against British colonialism and defeated British colonialism. The people of Ghana have done many things before. The people of Ghana have demonstrated throughout our history that we are people capable of thinking and acting in our interest. Let nobody take us for fools. Don't worry. He says 60, so me I count 50. If he says 40, I'll come 30. If he says 30, I'll come 20. Abba! What is this? And for me, what worries me is an inferred assumption that we can't see through this. Yeah. And if we can't see through this, then we are all yo-yos. Unfortunately for you, Dr. Alhaji Timothy Mahmoud Bawumia, His Excellency, we are not yo-yos. We are capable of thinking. Unfortunately, we are not yo-yos. We are capable of thinking. There's something that killed me completely in the address. Senna, I died. Hey! And I'm sure you guys know what I'm talking about. What? Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia said something that was classic. He says, under his administration, as president of Ghana, nobody will have to apply for a passport.
Yeah. Yes.
All you have to do is to have the national ID card. And I was wondering, what is an application for passport? An application for passport is simply a request that you need a passport. So if you're not going to be applying for passport, what will happen? You sit in your house and because you have a national ID card, passport office will deliver a passport to you in your home, whether you need it or not. What is this? He actually said that the passport will be delivered to your house. You remember? He says if you have that that house address, the one you generate electronically.
GPS address. Yeah.
Yes. They will deliver your passport to your house. You don't have to request for it. Hey! You remember Super Odi? When Super Odi was faced with such situations, he always used to shout, Abakede. You remember? That was an Abakede moment. Hey! What happened? Look at Joe. What? Put that aside. Then this one, I don't know where it came from. The abolition of the National Service Scheme.
Yeah.
Why?
He said that people are not happy with it.
Who told him that?
Bold solution for the future.
I mean, the National Service Scheme. This is one scheme which was introduced in order to instill a sense of patriotism in our graduating youth, to introduce them to work ethics, to give them breathing space while they search for room. You understand? In the
Labor market.
I don't want to call it a labor market. It's not a labor market. You understand? Yeah, labor market is under capitalism. You understand? And then he comes and he says, I'm going to abolish it. And he says it with a straight face. Abolish it for what? Last week, I had the privilege of interviewing the executive director of the National Service Scheme. And Senna, the man spoke eloquently about how to transform the National Service Scheme so that it doesn't depend on the national purse, so that it will contribute significantly to the reduction of importation of food and so on. And he has a blueprint which he claimed to have submitted to government. That one too, they dodged him from Dr. Bawumia. They didn't make him see it. So he's going to abolish the National Service Scheme in a situation of high unemployment. So he's going to abolish the National Service Scheme, but his government came up with NAPCO. Unbelievable! You know, Charlie, the man is my brother. I have to be careful. Oh, Bawumia is my brother, Master. I have to be careful. You know? Look, every ambassador in Ghana was invited to the event. I hope you know that. How many turned up? 5. 5. Now, what is interesting is that by the time he started speaking, all the ambassadors had left. What happened? I don't know. The first ambassador to leave was the German ambassador. The second ambassador to leave was the Palestinian ambassador. Check. If I'm lying, tell me. The people who came, who managed to come, were 5. They left. Why? What happened? And then you know that, Senna, I've been in PR practice for some time. Maybe I was not a very good practitioner, but there are some basic rules that all of us learn in PR. If you have a message, you first and foremost weigh your message. If it's a good message, which would win for you and so on, you want to deliver that message at a time when everybody's attention will be caught. Classic PR message. You choose the time, choose the time, choose the moment, and so on. Those are carefully chosen by any serious organization and so on, PR. So I'm sitting down and I hear that, this whole thing was slated to coincide with the semi-final matches of AFCON. Was it deliberate? And if it was deliberate and was done by a PR expert, the obvious implication is that, hey, the message is no good, don't go and deliver it at this time. If it was by accident, more wahala. If it was by accident, it means poor planning. So even the timing was problematic. The timing was so problematic. Whatever way you look at it, disaster. You understand? Now, there's one thing which was good about this address. And I think it's important to say it. For the first time, I didn't see the attempt to excite regional and ethnic sentiments. And that was very good about this Bawumia presentation. And I will urge him from the bottom of my heart that if he has become Paul, the latter Paul, not the original Paul, Paul Ambantem, if he has become Paul, he should remain Paul. Because the excitement of regional and ethnic sentiments is so nauseating, it's clearly unacceptable. And may not vote for me, it should not be repeated anywhere. I'm so happy that he didn't repeat it this time. Because first of all, it doesn't make sense. Here is a man who was so busy working to defeat a Northerner in an election, to be replaced by somebody from the Eastern region. Then all of a sudden he says, no, we Northerners also deserve to be president. When did he realize that Northerners deserve to be president? When did he realize that? This is Kwame Nkrumah's Ghana. We don't care about what region our leaders come from. And we shouldn't care about what region our leaders come from. What we should care about is to have leaders who in 7 years would not increase the price of kenke, or their actions will not lead to the increase in the price of kenke from 50 pesos to 5 cedis. That's what we want. If my leader comes from a Semankasi and he works to maintain the price of kenke at 50 pesos, I'm happy with him. If he comes from Bumpurubu and he works to maintain the price of kenke at 5 cedis, I'm happy with him. Of course, if he comes from Apam or Gama and he works to maintain the price of kenke at 50 pesos, I'm happy with him. If he comes from Alata in Apam, where my grandparents come from, and within 7 years he moves the price of kenke from 50 pesos to 5 cedis, I will work against him and I will fight him. So where we come from is not important. You should stop that. And I'm happy it appears that he's beginning to see wisdom and he's stopping that ethnic and regional thing. He's stopping it. Good for him, good for Ghana. And then there's this issue also about separating a fight which does not exist. He is going to be the unifier. He's going to unify Muslims and Christians. Why did we start fighting Muslims and Christians for him to come and separate us or unify us? So he's dealing with phantoms. He's not dealing with reality, he's dealing with phantoms. And I'm so happy that in his so-called vision, presentation of vision, there was no vision there anyway. In his so-called presentation of vision and so on, this Christian-Muslim fight did not come up. There were so many things about his own administration that he wanted to reject. And when I saw him rejecting policies he levied and so on, I was sitting down waiting for him to reject one more thing. I think everybody knows what I'm talking about. His boss has said that he stands firmly with Ukraine and Israel. Do you notice that one he didn't reject? So he stands firmly with Ukraine and Israel like his boss? Israel, an apartheid, racist, occupationist republic. Bawumia didn't go there at all. He stands firmly with Israel and Ukraine. You cannot stop the war in Baku. You are going to stand with Ukraine against Russia. Are you mad? Baku? You can't stop the war in Baku. I'm back in it. You can't stop the war in Baku. You are going to stand with Ukraine. Go and stand with Ukraine. Look, Ghana, we have enough troubles already. Oh. The hunger, all the kinds of problems that we have, bad roads and so on. We don't want to stand with Ukraine. We want our leaders to do things that will build our roads. Look, when it rains and you go to Domi Market, you cry for the poor woman. When it rains and you go to the Malata Market, you cry for the poor woman. These are the small challenges, but important challenges that we face. And we expect our leaders to deal with. Standing with Ukraine, firmly with Ukraine, does not solve that problem. And we must respect our history, respect our role in the national liberation struggles in Africa. And if we do that, we'll be acting as South Africa and not be standing firmly with Israel, an apartheid, racist republic ruled by demented leaders and so on. That's what we stand with. That one, Bawumia had no problems with it. Then there was something else. Bawumia praised free SHS to the highest heavens. Something, hey, this man, what's wrong with him? Bawumia led our team that went to negotiate with the IMF. Is he going to deny that too? Was he an aplanke on that trip? And if he was an aplanke, who was the driver? Kenu Forieta? I doubt. He led the negotiation team. The Ghana government and the IMF agreed that the program should be reviewed. Go and check, go and read. That is the one he likes. That is the one he praised the government for. That is the one he's going to religiously implement. When he has already signed an agreement to review it. So now should I talk some more? Should I say some more?
We are listening.
Master, let's end here. Let's end here.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, that should end our discussion on the very first topic. That's on the what Dr. Bawumia presented, called it his vision. There are lots of messages you sent to me on this, on my WhatsApp number. Some of you are sending me personally messages. There's this one that I can only read but not mention the name of the person. It says, on the online passport application arguments, it needs to be underscored that the Comptroller and Accountant General, who was the Director of Finance at the Foreign Ministry during JDM's era, was a member of the ministry's Technical Committee on Passport, which was headed by Ambassador Leslie Kojo Christian. At the time the online project was launched, they should ask the controller if it is not a fact. That's another issue that people have been raising questions with. He claims that they started the online passport application thing, and they are being challenged on that fact. There's also this one which says, hi, Bawumia is seriously a joke and can never be Ghana's president. Just listen to him repeating JM's visionary phrase of eating all the meat and now left with the bones. Upside down to indicate GM left no money, hence left them a messed economy. Let Bawumia and MPP take note that GM wanted Ghanaians to be aware that the payment of single spine salary structure to government workers had taken almost 75% of total revenue of Ghana, hence the 25% left can't cope to do development projects. On that note, GM indicated the IMF was then the best solution for policy credibility to bring into the country. That's coming from Papa BCU. Thank you very much for that message. There's this one from BB in Accra who says, I have seriously advised my case to not to stop any trotro moving zigzag on the way from Domi to Musoko. It might be a planke Bawumia and driver Nana. It's some more messages.
Why Musuku?
That's where he lives.
The destination.
And my destination is the one he chose.
Probably you choose his destination as well.
This is from Flamingo in Krachi, who says, I'm watching you live. When Dr. Bawumia speaks, all social media and main media platforms are busy talking. The best, and he continues, the best vice president ever in the history of Ghana is Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia. Mahama has no message for Ghanaians. I'm not a soothsayer, but Dr. Bawumia is coming live as president. That's Flamingo, who is in Krachi. There's Dennis Akwete. For me, it was strikingly shocking and perhaps nauseating that after the show, Dr. Bawumia, as of now, is still at post in a government where all those taxes he intends to abolish in his future government are still imposed. In fact, unless that whole engagement was staged politically to consciously and tactically blame only Nanado for the failure of government in order to pave way for the MPP to win the 2024 elections, only to reconnect and perpetuate their unfinished business, something might be wrong somewhere. What a comedy into full hole. I just can't fix it. Some more on the Pan-African TV. WhatsApp number says, good morning. Good morning to everybody, especially Mr. Kwesi Pratt, that my greatest achievement is to see him, stand by him, and humbly submit myself to him, to mentor. So I admire him and wish to meet him before I leave this world. Seeing him will be my greatest achievement. Thank you. Didn't add a name. This one says, you're doing great. In fact, Mr. Pratt is so great. May the good Lord bless him. All his points are up. Isaac sent you this one. Isaac, thank you very much for that message. There's just one from Martin Amevo, who says, please, I would like to understand something here. The man called Alhaji Bawumia with the title doctor. If possible, I want to know the kind of academic discipline which made him to acquire the title doctor. Is it economic discipline? Yes.
I'll just tell you something. I managed to find Dr. Bawumia's doctoral thesis.
Okay.
And I read it. And when I finished reading it, I was a bit, so I said, how can I be talking about doctoral thesis when I don't have some? You understand? And so I passed it on to my friends who are qualified to evaluate. And the evaluation I got speaks volumes. Indeed, over the last couple of weeks, I've been to my social media handles and so on, trying to find it again. I haven't found it yet. But I promise that I'll find it and I'll publish it for everybody to read.
You will publish his PhD thesis?
Yes, I will. Because he says in the introduction that it's free, anybody can publish it. I've read his doctoral thesis, I'll publish it.
I'll help you find it.
It's not a threat. I will publish Dr. Bawumia's doctoral thesis.
What's the title, by the way?
It's about the economy.
Okay.
I think it's about IMF measures and so on, you know. I'll publish Dr. Bawumia's doctoral thesis for everybody to read and know what it's about. That's all. No evil intended, no harm intended, just honesty. Finish.
Thank you. Abbas Amagobo says, this year's election, Dr. Bawumia will smell pepper. He should not think he'll get 30% of the votes, and the EC should not try to steal for Bawumia. Even the MPP didn't like his speech. Mahama all the way. This one says, I see Bawumia more of a confident trickster. Why didn't he make this a pronouncement prior to the Super Delegates Congress if he's really his own man? Yes, more coming in. As I'm reading, they are sending in more. So, Senator Bawumia is a disappointment to the Ghanaian public. Senator, we, the youth of the three North tongues, we say no job, no vote. There's a strongman, who says electric vehicles have been used in the Netherlands over 2 years now, but public transport has not gone down. Ghana is still experiencing doom. So how can Dr. Bawumia think that electric vehicles usage will reduce the cost of public transport between 30 to 40%? We will still need power to change them. Electric vehicles indeed help to reduce environmental pollution, but you can't convince me that it will reduce first. So many messages. In fact, we have to move on to our next topic of discussion. There's so much to read, and I thank you for sending them in. So many messages. Well, it's the matter of all talk shows. Alhaji and Alhaji. We're live on Pan-African Television, of course, live on Radio Gold, 90.5 FM, your power station, live on many other affiliate stations across the country. A big thank you to all for joining us this morning, making time to listen to us, and of course, watch us live on Pan-African Television. A big thank you to my panel this morning, Mr. Kwesi Prajinia, who is General Secretary of the Socialist Movement of Ghana. A big thank you to Dr. David Percy, who's a student of History and Politics, and a big thank you to Ni Yaboy Annan, who is a member of the National Democratic Congress, financial analyst, and sitting right by me is Solomon Owusu, who is a member of the Movement for Change. We have to move on to the discussion on the IMF's caution to government that has to do with the issue with organized labor. We're all waiting for this demonstration. Organized labor all of a sudden says that they will go and listen to government first before they will come back. Well, so I'll start with you again.
Yes, Sana, as for organized labor, the least said about them, the better. I mean, when they announced that they were going to embark on demonstration, I think it was on Radio Go that I said anyone that trusted that position was doing so at his or her own peril. They were not going to do anything. They were only making up so that government will rather increase the amount of money that will be given to the executives so that they back off. And this is how the country has been reduced to. There is no reason why the demonstration under any form or shape should be stopped. But they have done so. The days where Christian Appiaje, as the boss of TUC, were leading the charge, they made governance or government set up. These current crop of leaders we have, they are the reason you have Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia together with the MPP, after an abysmal performance, still think that there is a way to win an election in this country. Elsewhere, my greatest difficulty is Dr. Bawumia picking the form. Because for him to pick a nomination form to be elected or offer himself to be elected as the president of Ghana is an insult to the intelligence of the good people of this country. After all, in the constitution, the Electoral Commission is supposed to register only people with sound mind. And the sound mind Ghanaians must exhibit how sound their minds are come election 2024 to entrust the destiny of this country into the hands of Mr. Alan Chamantin, because he has proven beyond all reasonable doubt that he can manage the economy well. The IMF. Dr. Percy was talking about the con men and con one, or so, if I got it right. And I will not be wrong in saying this is scam one. What the IMF is saying is that the government must not attempt to scam them. And any attempt to scam them will be met with all the forces available at their disposal. See, there was a reason why the IMF engaged the government of Ghana on 3 separate occasions, as I read in my first submission. That in September of 2022, they met the Ghana team in Accra. The Ghana team went to Washington in October of 2022, and in December, the IMF came back here. And there is also a reason why when you want to access any facility from the IMF, there is a staff level agreement. It is at the agreement stage that how you intend to pay back their facility is put on paper and it is approved. So Ghana had represented itself in a certain way that we will be doing certain things to be able to pay back the credit facility that IMF was extending to us. It is also in the same vein as based on the staff level agreement that gave some level of assurance to our external creditors. Remember, sir, as we speak, we are not paying our loans, we are not paying our external creditors. And they believe that because the IMF facility is in place, there is some level of hope that they will be paid somehow. So the government of the day, led by Dr. Bawumia, told the IMF that they will be imposing certain taxes, i.e. the emission levy the 15% VAT on electricity. E-levy is even included, because when they made their presentation, they said, well, e-levy will still be available, including the COVID levy.
Okay.
They believe that all these revenue measures would rake in more revenue to the government for them to pay back. The IMF extended or made payment of $600 million as far back as May of 2023, and said that if you were able to implement certain conditionalities captured in the agreement, then they will add the second tranche of $600 million. What were the conditions? Impose the 15%, impose emission levy. All these things were captured in the budget. You have to engage in domestic haircut, external haircut, and so on and so forth. Now your budget was passed, meaning everything in the budget will be implemented. IMF goes ahead to give you $600 million as the second tranche. You are supposed to impose the 15% VAT. Organized labor wakes up. Ghanaians cry out loud. You now know that you are faced with the possibility of performing worse in all form of elections ever since your party was established. So you unleash your national organizer of the party to go on there and say that the government must take out the emission levy and then the VAT, 15% VAT, and all of a sudden we are told it's suspended. Mind you, they did not suspend this VAT on electricity because of the TUC. It was suspended purely because the national organizer of the party went on air, having realized that rhetoric in 2024 is not going to work, to call on the government to immediately suspend the VAT on electricity. That was how come the government decided to listen to the good people of this country. So when you do that, it throws the whole staff level agreement ajar. Now the question the IMF is asking is, how would we get our money back? If you are taking out the 15% VAT, what are you replacing with the 15% VAT on electricity to assure them of their revenue? That is where the problem is. And if you cannot assure them any form of revenue that is going to fill the gap, then why must they continue with the whole program? And if you are not going to continue with the whole program, what happens to our external creditors, whom we are not paying? So it's a very dire situation we find ourselves. And we have gotten to this place. That's why Ghanaians must not be listening to leaders whose preoccupation is just promising. Because whoever is taking over from President Akufo-Addo will only be operating within the IMF program. The 2025 budget that will be prepared would only have to be prepared in accordance to the IMF program, where you cannot do a lot of things. Focus now is on taxation, how to tax your people so much so that IMF could be paid and paid on time, so much so that the external creditors could be paid on time. And that is where we find ourselves. And it tells us how deep the problem is. So if you just suppose the position of the IMF to what do you call it, Dr. Bawumia went and presented as his vision, how do you reconcile the two? All the numerous promises, how is Dr. Bawumia going to achieve when the country itself does not have money? Do you believe for a moment that if the country was in a better shape, as he made the world to believe, that the economy was rebounding or bouncing back, how on earth would you implement or impose a 15% VAT on electricity, residential electricity? Indeed, you can make the argument that this policy was approved somewhere in 2013, but mind you, we were going to the IMF. And when it was approved in 2013, was it implemented? So there are so many things in the heart of a man, but it's not all that is good for all of us. If by imposing 15%, you are further going to impoverish your citizens, and mind you, governance is about improving the living conditions of your people, then how can you say that you are a government that should be trusted? No one based on what the IMF is saying alone, must give any credibility to what Dr. Bawumia is proposing or said last Wednesday, because he was the leader of the government delegation that deliberated with the IMF, and he knew at all material time that imposing 15% VAT on the good people of this country was going to further increase the level of hardship. Sarah, the level of hardships in this country currently, sometimes I wonder why Ghanaians or how Ghanaians are able to survive. No productivity is going on. Can you imagine a country where we are not servicing our debt? Still, the dollar to the cedi is still hovering around 12 cedi. If indeed there was productivity in this country, what it means is that all the dollar that we will be generating will be used to shore up our cedi. So the cedi would further reduce to a significant amount downwards. But because we are not doing anything productive, we are unable to generate the much needed forex to back our currency for it to be stable. It is wobbling. Now fuel is also going up. And it tells you how our economy has been run down. And it has been run down because we are leaders in this country who are not serious. And that is why in going into election 2024, you must be very, very careful the kind of promises you are assured. 2025 Senate is going to be a very difficult year. 2026 will be a very difficult year. Mind you, all the debt haircuts that they gave to people, the bulk of the amount will start, the repayment will start in 2016. Have you asked yourself where government will get the money to be paying back all these investors? We don't have it, but there is nothing happening. We don't have it because the private sector has been collapsed with high interest rate and high taxes. We don't have it because as we speak, no individual with that high interest rate can engage in any productive venture in this country. And that is why you see all the middle class wiped out and you see poverty actually growing up. We understand that close to 850,000 people have been added to the poverty bracket. I think the Ghana Statistical Service must go back and do another job. The figure will be more than 850,000. We are talking about close to 2 million. Go to various private schools. Now people are even taking their kids once out of private schools because they cannot afford to pay school fees anymore. Things are very difficult. The IMF must understand that always looking at indices, that your inflation is down, your GDP is down, it cannot be done at the expense of human beings. If our governments are just mumu and they will go and present bogus policies, the IMF must look at the Ghanaian as a human being. Policies that they cannot cost their own countrymen. These IMF people, mostly from India, Pakistan, would they be able to go to their country and introduce VAT on electricity? You take it out. Let's say that our leaders are just mumu and they brought these useless policies. And look at Ghanaians as human beings. Would it be prudent, for instance, to tell Ghanaians to be paying emission levy? Emission levy to do what? Emission levy to do what? So it is not a good situation, but I am happy that they that defended Dr. Bawumia and Kinoforiata, when it was obvious that they had messed things up. Remember, their boss, she is now dabbling in Ghanaian politics more than anybody. The least opportunity she gets, she is the first person to say, oh, Ghana's economic problem is Russia, Ukraine, without also blaming the government. That there were so many things that we could have done to avert the situation. Okay. The country that bombs were flying, Ukraine, as we speak, they have positive growth. Their inflation is better than Ghana, their GDP is better than Ghana. Russians that were throwing the bombs, their inflation is better than Ghana, GDP is better than everything, only in Ghana. To the extent that when Burkina Faso threatens that they are not doing business with us, it becomes a problem because we are not engaging in productivity. I'll end it here.
Thank you very much. This is Martin Kwame Sovier. Martin Kwame said in Sovier says the trust deficit of Dr. Bawumia is pathetic if he's a PhD holder in economics and has played a critical role in the destruction of our economy. How can he be trusted to be successful in a digitization drive when Ghanaians don't know his pedigree in the IT space. Dr. Bawumia has defiled the chastity of the presidency. Had him picked from the driver's mate who posed some 176 questions to his colleague mates on how to drive is now saying he's not the driver. Was His Excellency the humble and hardworking VIP, Mr. Arthur, the driver, when Bawumia asked him the 176 questions? If Nanado, as a driver, couldn't take us to our destination, then don't expect anything good from Dr. Bawumia, his mate. Vote for competent, vote for His Excellency the humble and hardworking gentleman called JDM. This is also one that says, why is Dr. Bawumia not answering his own 170 questions? Was Mr. Arthur not the VIP at the time he directed the questions to him? A man without principles is worse than genocide. And then finally, there's Dr. Kofasek Befia, who says, it looks to me that all of us did not get the import of what Dr. Bawumia said in the 70-plus page delivery. Bawumia first confirmed what well-meaning Ghanaians, including the NDC, have said all along. Second, and most importantly, by deviating from the Hydra-headed tax regime of this government, Dr. Bawumia is clearly telling those in the NPP who thought they were propping him to become president so they can use him, that they can never use him, and that he will show them that he has a mind of his own. That's Dr. Akofa Segbefia's analysis. Please, you have 10 minutes.
Well, try and fix it within. Look, I would want to say very little about the Labour front. And look, first and foremost, if they want to be taken serious, they must exercise themselves from the demon called partisan politics that has so much engulfed them. In the exception of the Fourth Republic, we saw a very vibrant TUC, Labour Front, Student Front. I quite remember various demonstrations under President Rawlings, organized by Nooks, and all the happenings back then. The shooting incident at IPS, now UPS, and all that. It was vibrant. It was politics was really not in there. It was not about MPP and DC at that time. It was about the welfare of the people of Ghana. As we speak today, we cannot say same about most of these unions and pressure groups. They have all politically aligned and no longer see reason to fight for the people. Well, the issue of IMF warning Ghana to stick to plans, I think that we must really situate the conversations well. What is the IMF trying to say? What are they trying to tell us? Is it an issue that, look, you promise us this and you are failing? That is what we need to find out. In fact, the IMF program that Ghana was signed on to as part of the strategies, where I think paragraph 16 of that document, government of Ghana has clearly stated that they are not interested in lowering their appetite in terms of expenditure. And rather, they will do so much well to raise more revenue. We promised to raise additional revenue of almost $4 billion. And because of these commitments we have made to the IMF, they stood by us to negotiate with the official creditors. Now, in terms of our official debt to our official creditors, we are looking about a quarter of our debt to be restructured, about $20 billion to be restructured. That conversation the people of Ghana has been taken out of. We are not part of that conversation. Both the official creditors and the negotiators in terms of our side, Ghana, has remained tight-lips. But we know bits and pieces of what is going on in there. And the issue basically is suspend our debt servicing till after 4 years. And that is deferment. Because they are not saying cancel debt servicing. So what government is proposing is that after 4 years, all what we were supposed to have serviced, which we failed to service, would come crashing in. And at that time, we needed to have developed the capacity, the muscle to pay. If you look at our projections, we will not have that capacity to pay when the time comes, in terms of how our revenue growth is actually growing. It's growing at a very slow pace. And we need to justify that position. And therefore, every revenue strategy to rake in revenues to this country is welcome by the IMF. Because, in fact, they have lent us part of their credibility to actually go out there to have this agreement and negotiations with the official creditors. Now, one of the key points that they are struggling to agree on is the fact that should our debt up to March 2020 be considered, or that of 31st December 2022. So there is clearly an issue of a cutoff point. We were told that we had to borrow more, we had to spend excessively because of COVID. That is what hit us. In fact, in Bawumia's speech, he had made reference to that. So I thought that if we confidently believe that what hit us was more about 2020 and what happened in 2020 and the fact that we had to borrow more to keep this country going, or spend more to keep this country going, based on the shocks we received from COVID, the pandemic, then at worst we should be negotiating a cutoff point up to December 2020. But government is bent on achieving a cutoff point of December 2022, which actually carries about some hundreds of millions of dollars as debt in between March 2020 and 31st December 2022. Now, my issue here is the VAT on residential electricity was actually part of the VAT Act 870/2015. That was not an initiative of the NPP government. It has never been implemented. What we seek to do is to implement it. I am surprised that Dr. Bawumia is not calling that as a nuisance tax, and is not actually crediting that to the NDC government, but says simply that when I get the opportunity to serve as the president, I will repeal it. What other strategies did he put up to actually rake in revenues and make sure that we are so debt sustainable after the 4 years they seek to suspend debt servicing? Until today, we don't know. The debt strategies that has been implemented post-COVID, none of it has been successful. Not a single one of it has been successful. And what I mean by not being successful, it has not achieved its target, and it has not delivered what it's supposed to have delivered. Because we were told e-levy was the solution. And with e-levy, we would even bring in more jobs, we would be debt sustainable, we will be that, we will be that. That has failed. The COVID levy has come in. Clearly, it is a failure, and it has become nuisance. So someone should tell me, someone should have done the mathematics to tell us that the VAT on electricity is going to bring us so much. I am not satisfied with just saying we are introducing this or we are implementing this tax. Tell me how much is that going to bring us, and if it will meet the purpose. Is that going to make us debt sustainable? I think no. What is the target? And I don't know. It is not my business to come up and speak about the targets that it could achieve. But like I did with the e-levy, I can promise you whatever targets they will put up, it will fail. They will not achieve a quarter of that target. Because those within the lifeline territory in terms of consumption of electricity are mainly household in areas that are not so accessible, areas that ECG is not so effective, areas that illegal connection is predominant, areas that ECG is reluctant to provide meters. If you are government, that means well, that really believes in what he is doing, then I suggest that there must have been some strategies to make sure that these losses are curtailed before the implementation of such a tax. But I see none of that. But to say that, well, introduction of it solves part of our problem. Now, what the IMF is saying is, we really don't care what you are going to do with your revenue generation. We don't really care about the details. What we care is the program you have with us that says that we will rake in more revenue. That will make us sustainable. And therefore, if you come up with a strategy to implement, and then with a little pressure, you turn around and say, well, I am no longer going to implement that strategy. Your credibility in front of the very people you are in the boardrooms with, discussing a suspension of your debt servicing for 4 years, becomes suspect. The trust will no longer be there. So clearly, this matter goes beyond just a tax that is going to be repealed, a tax that is being introduced. It is about Ghana's debt sustainability. And that conversation is what needs to be on the table, and not what we are being served with.
Thank you. Thank you. Alhaji Hamza in Pig Farm says, in my humble opinion, the speech delivered by Dr. Bawumia is a betrayal and a slap in the face of President Nana-Addo and the MPP party. Today, Dr. Bawumia is telling us that he is just a driver's mate. So, in what capacity did he prepare the 170 questions for the late Mr. Atta to answer? Dr. Bawumia should stop insulting our intelligence and creditors with the little respect we deserve. Dr. Bawumia cannot be trusted simply because he's suffering from credibility crisis. And this one, big thank you. I think Louisa has delivered. She'll also showed it to me, the thesis in question. There's also Habib Bantus who says, good morning. Is it the same Bawumia who gave lectures in Fora, who went and promised the people of Cape Coast an airport? The same Bawumia who gave late PK 175 questions and cannot answer them. The same Bawumia whose greatest achievement is building toilets, 1D, 1F, 1V, 1D, and the rest of his scams. Bawumia is just a scam, and he's Akufo-Addo's third term in office. Dr. Percy.
Yeah. What was it that the IMF was cautioning Ghana about?
Yeah, they should stick to the program guidelines.
Oh,
They're
okay.
a good program. Yeah.
Well, in simple terms, the IMF is a debt collector for imperial interests. And we signed an agreement with the debt collector that we will do many things to raise revenues. That means to impose taxes. The government hasn't said much about what it will do to cut expenditures, to reduce waste, and redirect the resources that leak through corruption. All those were options that were available to Ghana. But in a certain sense, the IMF itself is part of the con, because Ghana didn't quite satisfy the conditions for the start of the bailout. But the principals of the IMF, the US in particular, needed Ghana to make quote-unquote progress. They couldn't afford what was orchestrated in the case of Sri Lanka. They couldn't afford to do that. They have been working on Ghana to bring us to this position for a very long time, since they superintended the overthrow of Nkrumah. They haven't had a more subservient Ghanaian government, and they may not have one for a while. So IMF itself is part of the business of managing things so that somehow this government can stay on. Or if it doesn't stay on, you can go out in conditions which makes it possible for it to come back, because the difficulties will really bite. Not now, but under the next government. And they'll be in a position to say, well, we told you that. And banking on the short memories of the Ghanaian people, they can come back to the old game. I mean, in other situations, the IMF will not allow someone like our finance minister to stay at post. But it's all part of the con, and they're part of the con. And the point is to maintain us in our current situation. What the IMF basically does is that if you look at the logic of any new colony like we are, whatever you do, you fall into debt. Why? Because you are at the lower end of every value chain. You are producing primary commodities whose prices you don't set, and you sell them for value added in exchange, made from those primary commodities. And I have a very simple illustration. In 1960, you know about the equivalent of a ton of cocoa to exchange for a
truly African. 24th February 1966, a date etched in Ghana's memory, a day the sun refused to shine.
Whose prices you also don't set. That's the basic logic of the economy. If it's designed that way, you perennially fall into debt. It doesn't matter how many interventions. Is it intervention number 17 or is it 18? The current.
Yeah, this is the 18th.
This is the 18th, yes. So 19th is guaranteed, and the 20th is guaranteed, and the 21st is guaranteed, so on and so forth. Maybe every 3 to 4 years. If we don't change the logic of our economy, we're wasting our time. And all that the IMF does is to adjust your chain so that it doesn't strangle you. Because they need you in that situation. Their principals need you in that situation. It's very profitable for them that you continue to do the business you're doing, which is to stay at the low end of the value chains. You produce primary commodities for export, and you import food. And you continue to import manufacturers. And being a happy hunting ground for extractive industries that took out things very cheap and return them to you very expensive. If we don't change that basic logic, we're going nowhere fast. That has not been the subject of any conversation, any intelligent conversation in our country. Occasionally, you may hear murmurings from the TUC, but no. So this is a basic logic. But the IMF has to, from time to time, make noise and tell our governments that, hey, look, this is the agreement we have with you. Okay? Your job is to raise taxes, raise revenues, so that you can begin to pay the debts you owe to our principals. But they can cut you some slack depending on the geopolitical interest of their principals. And like I said, Ghana has been a very, very useful stooge in that sense. Why? Ghana is leading the charge in standing by Ukraine and standing with Israel in its genocide in Palestine. Okay? And it's very, very useful. So they can cut us some slack occasionally. They can overlook a few things. But the conditions are being set. If this bunch of incompetents are thrown out, they'll be coming right back in. Because there are going to be huge difficulties. If they manage to steal the election and stay on, well, that's when the real music would, this thing. Like I said, there's a tsunami of pain coming our way.
I see. Look, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, that's okay. This Ambassador Sampiade says, if a man shies away from his father's legacy, then his father was, not sure. Says the man has run away from his father, Alhaji Momuni Bawumia. Now he has denounced Akufo-Addo, who made him who he is. Then there's okay. Then there's Masola Public says it is laughable to hear these MPP guys and their board neutrals trying very hard to distance Bawumia from the mess he created as the head of the economic management team. They perhaps see every Ghanaian as their supporters who swallow what they say hook, line, and sinker, so they lie confidently without any fear. On 9th August 2016, Bawumia went to his Twitter page to write. He goes there. what Dr. Bawumia says. President Mahama spent 8 years destroying his foundation, replacing it with a weak foundation. That's in quote. In his tweet, he was blaming His Excellency Mahama as the vice president and then the president. But he, Bawumia, today, as a president, wants to absolve himself from the mess he created. One more before I come to Mr. Pratt for his views on this. Okay. Mr. Pratt?
Well, it's obvious that we don't have the time to do any in-depth discussion of the issue. The point I simply want to make is that the IMF presents no solution to the hard-headed problems that confront our people. You can introduce re-levy, you can abolish it, you can do this, you can do that. It won't take us out of this quagmire. The path, the only sensible path to getting out of this problem of underdevelopment and poverty can be found in the resolution of the 5th Pan-African Congress in Manchester in 1945. It can be found in the 7-year development program and the reasons behind it, which was launched by the Nkrumah government. Until the people of Ghana own their resources and exploit these resources for their own benefit, we are not going anywhere. Finish.
Thank you. Thank you very much. A message from one of the people I expected to see when we were in Asawase, Buabu specifically, says, this is Musa Batasana, is only those who are short-sighted who fall for Dr. Bawumia's trick. He cannot run away from the mess they created. In fact, he's not just a mere advisor, but head of the economic management team who led the policy implementation, including e-levy, emission tax, bola tax, pollution tax, VAT on electricity, and all the useless taxes. Musa Batua, I went to, one of the reasons I was there was to meet you, but I didn't see you at Abuabo and Asawase. I saw Julius Agaho at Do, but it was fantastic, and we have to thank the Member of Parliament for the area who unfortunately couldn't join us, but made sure we had whatever we needed. Big thank you to the Member of Parliament for the area. Big thank you to Mr. Solomon also. Thank you very much, Solo. In fact, Solo facilitated the majority of that, and a big thank you to the management here at Pan-African Television. They put their efforts together and made sure the show in Kumasi. And we'll go back. We'll try and go back to the Ashanti region to hold a show there, Alhaji and Alhaji live from the Ashanti region once again. But it was fantastic being in Kumasi for the short period that we were there to do Alhaji and Alhaji live from Abuabo, Asawase. And let me say a happy birthday. You mentioned Haruna Jibril. Happy birthday to him. Happy birthday to our Fred Mensah, who watches the show. Kenley, Mr. Johnny Adam, who Patron Solo says I should say a happy birthday to you. Well, thank you very much for making time to join us on the Matter of All talk shows, Alhaji and Alhaji, live on Pan-African Television, live on Radio Gold, and many other affiliates across the country. Broadcasted live from the Surgical Dr. Kwame Nkrumah studio here at Pan-African Television. Of course, this month, one of the things that we'll be celebrating, some of you are looking forward to the love part, but one of the things we'll be marking is the Day of Shame, which is 24th February, that will mark. Of course, we'll announce to you what is being planned to mark that day, to remember the day that actually sent Ghana on this path. Well, a big thank you to Comrade Kwesi Prajinia, who is General Secretary of the Socialist Movement of Ghana. A big thank you to Dr. David Percy, who is a student of History and Politics. Nia Boyanan is a member of the NDC, proudly Ododio, and then sitting to my right is Mr. Solomon Owusu, who is a member of the Movement for Change, Team Alan. And condolences to my good friend, Ghanaian Times, Abigail Ano, who is burying her father today. We are back same time next week with another edition of the show. Do make a date. Until then, enjoy the rest of your weekend and have a fruitful week.
He's the Redeemer. He has labored, He has suffered to lead his people into the land of freedom. He is the Redeemer. He has labored, he has suffered to lead his people into the land of freedom. He is the Redeemer. He has labored, he has suffered to lead his people into the land of freedom. He is the Redeemer. He has labored, he has suffered to lead his people into the land of freedom. He is the Redeemer.